Caden, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, man. Hey, so it looks like we've got 12 people in here. It's 6 o'clock now. So if you want, I'll just kind of, the meeting's recorded. So I'll just kind of let you take it from here, introduce yourself, and then just kind of go into your presentation. I'll mute myself and let you have the stage. And then if you have any questions or anything, just let me know. I'll be listening on. But everything's recorded, and we'll post it and send it out after we're done. But I'm gonna let you kind of take it from here.
All right. Well, my name is Caden Salladay. I'm a student at Manitou Springs High School. I'm going to be a senior this year. I'm also the Chassa State President for the Leadership Program and the Student Body President at my school. Yeah. So are we good to jump right into it then?
Yeah, absolutely. Caden, go ahead. It's all you. Stage is yours, brother. I'm going to mute myself, and you take it from here.
All right. Awesome. I'm going to start off by giving you guys a quote. Ones who run headfirst into the unknown. They rush toward the danger. They put their own interests aside to protect us or to pull us into the future. Leaders will sooner sacrifice what is theirs to save what is ours, and they would never sacrifice what is ours to save what is theirs. This is what it means to be a leader. It means they choose to go first into the danger, head first into the unknown, and when we feel sure that they can keep us safe, we will march behind them and work tirelessly to see their visions come to life and proudly call ourselves their followers. So first, the way I'm going to kind of take this is I'd like you guys to write down something that drives you as a leader. So like why you're here today, what makes you want to be in this Zoom call, what makes you want to be a part of your community, and what makes you want to be a student leader in your school district. Write that down and give me as much information as possible, like what led you to this, like cause and effect, any information, and just kind of keep that thinking in your head as we kind of go through this. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to write that down, and then I'll get into the big portion of this. So I'll give you guys until about 6:05. All right, so I'm going to start up. So if you guys are still working, continue working, but just kind of keep that idea in the back of your head as we go through this. So leadership is a topic that I've learned is you can't define it the way that we usually define things. There's not even a way that we can begin to understand the full scope of leadership as it is. Because the matter of the fact is that to completely understand it, you'd have to use every minute of every single second of your life to get that full scope. Depending on your organization, your place, the position, even the person, every single leader and every single leadership decision is different. And so if you read books, yes, it'll give you an insight into this kind of stuff, but there's not really a way for us to define leadership as a whole. So the way that we usually define things is we got to take like a base understanding of it and make that definition. But something that I want to do is I want to kind of pull back that layer. I want to go away from that usual typical definition and kind of go to get away from that exactness and go towards the characteristics of a leader. Because even if you can't define it, there are things that each of us find important within a leader. One of them is being sacrifice. And I think that sacrifice holds a huge role in leadership. And that's kind of what this lesson is about. It's about sacrifice and how it relates to leadership. So the quote that I read you guys at the beginning of this lesson is one such definition of the job of a leader. As I said, it's not the full scope because there's this huge wide range of leadership and leaders that we can't kind of fit into that one definition. And that's the beauty of leadership. So is that as leaders, the expectation is that we set a belief system or a mission statement, and then we get people to get behind that mission statement and fight for what we're believing in. The greatest movements in history, the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King Jr., where he set a vision for America that said, I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. A dream that this nation is still realizing today. With those words and the words that King had set up before that speech, he set the tone for the movement. He set the direction for the movement. And then once that was set, he led from the back. It wasn't necessarily that he was pulling strings as he was the face of it, but he led from the back, and everyone else kind of did their own movement there. And that's how movements work. It's the message that you first hear. You can listen to the news all night, and you're going to hear the message that you hear, but you're not going to understand the person fully. So when you think of a movement, you're first going to understand the message, and you're going to buy into the message. And then later on, you're going to buy into the person. Now, the problem with that is if you don't have a message that people buy into, they're not even going to buy into you. And if you have a message they buy into, but they don't buy into you, then the movement doesn't work at all. So you have to have both of them. Another great example is what Mahatma Gandhi did in India, which he set a view and a direction for a movement. And then from there, it worked to that goal. The bottom line was that the most famous leaders set a direction and a meaning for the group that they're going. They're setting that direction so that everyone understands what's going on, how they're working it, what they're doing to get there. And that's what makes a good leader. The president of the United States is supposed to do this as part of the job. He or she is supposed to lay out the groundwork for policy. And so first you hear about the policy and you say, well, I buy into that policy. Now let me go research the person and see if I buy into them. And that's kind of how that process goes. If you don't buy into the person, but you buy into the policy, then that ends right there. You have to buy into both. So leadership is a content of character and a content of action. So everything that you do builds on your character, and it's kind of this full circle, like understanding of who an individual is and what they're pushing for. So with the way that elections are supposed to work, that's kind of how that's supposed to work. You do your own research. The thing is that you have a vision for people. They hear about that first and then they buy into it. That's what I wanted you to take from this part here. In the civil rights case, the vision was equality of opportunity for the African Americans, and people thought that that was good enough to fight for, so they got behind it. People would be willing to sacrifice their own well-being. You see videotapes from those movements, and you see African American people locking arms, being sprayed with fire hoses, being launched across streets, and all of this stuff, but they never react. And that's the beauty of this kind of stuff, is they're willing to sacrifice all the way up to their life to get something from what they're doing. And so as leaders, that it's our job to set that tone in that direction. And if you don't set that tone or that direction, it's going to be very, very hard to get a functioning and well rehearsed or well grouped group who's going to make any progress in that goal or anything like that. So as that movement kind of built on and people joined, they rushed headfirst into those streets to meet that goal. And that's kind of what we're looking for here. And you may think like, yeah, the direction of what we're doing is the easiest thing. It's the easiest thing to lay down. It's the first thing you have to lay down. But if you want to do it effectively, It is the hardest and most important piece of the puzzle, because if you have a unsturdy framework, then everything after that is not going to work. You need to know exactly what you're working for, exactly how you're working for it, and why you're working for that. And so that's kind of why I was asking you guys to write down, keep in mind why you're here today and why you're listening to this call. That's kind of what we're going to delve into and how it relates to sacrifice today. So one of the books that I've been reading is called The Infinite Game. And so it's by Simon Sinek. He has this idea of a mission statement that is infinite. So in leadership, it's a game where there is no winning. Though we may think at a football game, there's a set beginning and there's a set end. And in the end, there is a winner. And in the beginning, we don't know. So as we work through that process, we're trying to win. But with leadership, you have a beginning, and that end, hopefully it goes on beyond who you are as an individual. So after I leave the high school in Manitou Springs High School, that vision keeps going with or without me. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here. We want to get a strong mission statement, or as he calls it, what is it called? He calls it anyways, we want to get a strong mission statement that directs our people in the correct area, that we work on something that is meaningful to all of us, such to the point that we're willing and ready to give up a piece of ourselves, a piece of our time, a piece of who we are, to see that goal accomplished. And so it's kind of interesting, right? Both Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi did not see the end of their movements, yet their movements continued to move without them. And that is exactly what I'm talking about here. Because if you have a strong enough direction and you have an idea of how to attack it, and you have strong leadership, even after you're gone, people are going to continue to pursue that goal. And that's kind of what we're looking for as student leaders. It's an extremely, extremely hard thing to do. So if you don't get it right the first time, just keep trying and trying and trying. So something that I remember was the first day I think it was the first day in Stuco my sophomore year. The project was we had to go out in the hall with a group of 4 or 5, and we had to trace out the outline of a person. And then in that outline, we had to draw things that we thought were important as leaders. So if I'm a great leader, I have this attribute, and that's what we would draw in there. And so I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't know what this is. I have no clue what to say. I don't even know what to put down. And so because I'd never even thought about that before we got into this project here. I didn't even know where to begin at that point. So one thing that stuck in my head, and I remember it repeating and repeating and repeating in my head, is sacrifice. So I drew a cast on the leg of this construction worker because he had a belt as well. And I put sacrifice on it. So when we reconvened, the thing that was interesting was no one else had that on their person. And so it was something that I had paid attention to because it was different from everything else. It was something that no one else had even thought of. And ever since then, it's been something that's always stuck in my head, stuck with me, like when I'm doing things, like what am I sacrificing at this point? And I didn't really understand the full extent of a sacrifice up until last year. So the reason I put a cast was because I've been hurt very seriously with sports and things, and I didn't understand like the whole concept of sacrifice. And so as I grew as a leader, I got a more full understanding of what that is, and a more like encompassing view of kind of how that works. And so now I understand that sacrificing is where you're willing to put the needs of others before your own, the needs of the majority over the needs of the one. And it means sacrificing your free time or taking your late nights, your long hours, to make sure that the people around you get what they need. That, to me, is worth it. Even if I stay up so late, if my people around me are happy and they're getting what they need, it's worth it. And that is, I feel like sacrifice is the basis of leadership, and I'll explain to you why. So when you first began as a first freshman, let's say in your high school, your most simple sacrifice is time. And the best example I have for this in our school is service hours. So everyone is required to get a certain number of service hours. You're sacrificing a little bit of your time. And in the beginning, everyone's like, oh, service hours. I hate service hours. And once you kind of get the concept of who you're helping, what you're doing, and you get that social interaction with that, that sacrifice becomes more meaningful than just on paper. So as you move up that kind of chain, so your freshman year, you're just kind of getting the ropes. Sophomore year, you may have a board position or something like that. You move up, and it's like a magnifying glass. There's more of a magnifying glass kind of on you. There's more concentration on you. People are looking more directly at you. A great example of this is where if you are in the Senate, you don't have necessarily a direct magnifying glass on you because you're part of a big group. But when you're the president of the United States or anything like that, you have a magnifying glass on you at all times of the day. Not just your political life, but also your personal life and everything, literally everything. So the reason you get not a lot of people who want to go for those things is because of the amount of sacrifices it takes. Your private life is basically non-existent at this point. Every single thing that you have done in your life is now under a microscope for everyone to see. Everyone can judge you, everyone can criticize you, and everyone can see you at all times, anywhere they want. And that's the sacrifice that that person is making. Their whole life is now devoted to that. Even when they leave office, they have security with them for the rest of their lives. There's even the presidents like Ronald Reagan or Abraham Lincoln who've had assassination attempts upon them, and that's a sacrifice that they're willing to make. And that's the difference between a great leader and a good leader, is they're willing to go that extra step for their people. They don't care what's in it for them. They care what's in it for us. That's what sacrifice means to me. And that's kind of what I've learned over these years. So, and like that, not many people are ready to do that with their life and make that jump. It's extremely big. Another kind of example of a sacrifice is one that occurred on November 13th in 2004. A First Sergeant Castle witnessed Marines being pinned down in a building. And as he was exiting, he heard gunfire in the building and yelling, and then Marines exiting said building. Some of them wounded, and the first thing he did, he ran right into that building to support. And in the first room he got in there was an insurgent. And that insurgent, he eliminated the insurgent and went to the next room. And so in the next room, he sees a Marine who is wounded and completely pinned down by fire. So he runs down there to go get his fellow Marine, but now they're both wounded. They're both unable to get out of there. And a grenade from one of the insurgents rolls up next to him and his friend. And so Sergeant Castle rolls over on his friend who's right next to him and takes the shrapnel for him. And as the other Marines rush the building and they clear the area for these two, as he's being escorted out, it's one of the most famous pictures from 2004. He's covered in blood from the waist down, and he refused medical attention until every single person who was in that building had been treated. He did not care for his own safety until those people that he was working to save in there, were treated before him, because it was his decision to make that sacrifice. And those actions earned him the Navy Cross for those. That's a big, big reward. That's a huge medal in the military. And it required him to physically sacrifice his own well-being for another person. And it's not about the one person. He was there for all of his soldiers, not about that one he saw wounded. If he could have, he would have gone to the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. Same with Martin Luther King and his fight for freedom. And same with Gandhi. when they died, their movements didn't end. When they made that ultimate sacrifice, the movement did not end. It kept going stronger than ever, and those movements, one of them, still goes on today, as strong as it ever could be. And that is the absolute beauty of leadership. And that's why I was talking about that, like that direction that you have to give to your student leaders. If you give them a direction that each of them is willing to work for every day and come to work for and just grind it out, you're going to have a way more efficient council, and it's going to be an area and an environment where growth and dedication become extremely valuable. And it's just super, super beautiful. Those are the things that people feel inspired by. These are those stories. And so if you want the power to be able to do that, it's got to start with your foundation and kind of why you're doing this. So think about that, and then think about the characteristics that you as a leader think are most important. Like I said earlier, kind of rewinding a little bit, Ronald Reagan had an assassination attempt against him. He was shot in a crowd simply because somebody wanted to impress an actress. So as leaders, we don't necessarily know that we're signing our names up for that. We don't know we're signing our names up for that, but we're willing to think, what could happen and what am I standing for? It's that sacrifice, that kind of willingness to put yourself out there, to be scrutinized, to never live the same life again, it's super, super admirable. And it's the basis for which leadership is built upon. Going back to your like Paleolithic and Neolithic ages, there were things that people had to sacrifice in order to survive. And so one thing is, when hunter-gatherers would come back, the people who went hunting would get the best meat. And then the people who did not would get the second pick of meat. Another example of kind of how that works is in the Marines, when you're leader of your squadron or your platoon, they always eat last. There's not a single one of them that eats first. They are always the last ones to eat. They make the extra sacrifice to show their people that they are dedicated to them. If there's not enough food, they're not eating. If there's not enough medical attention, they're not going to take that medical attention until everyone else is done. They're willing to put themselves out there so that the other people around them can survive, and effectively so that we can move past what we're trying to achieve here. And it's just this really, really, really important thing to me. I wish that I had someone who was willing to sacrifice for me at all points. And I'm sure that everyone here had some wish that they had that same thing, or wish that they could offer that same thing to someone else. And that's what society teach you, is that you should climb this ladder, this figurative ladder, and just take as much with you. And the matter of the fact is, as you climb the ladder, if you take everything with you, once you get to that top rung, it's going to break. If you sacrifice little things as you climb the ladder, your free time, your security, the rest of your life, as you kind of climb that ladder, that's how leadership really works. So it's totally counterintuitive of what society teaches you, that as you move up, you take a pay upgrade. As you move up, you get more sick days or anything like that. It's totally counterintuitive of how the society we live in functions. And so as we transition from high schoolers to adults, that's also something that we can work on. But right now we're talking about student leadership. So the saying, sometimes you have to go forward, you have to take a step backwards to go forward, is also completely true. And I know it sounds 100% cheesy, but it is 100% true. Because sometimes to take that step forward, you got to take a step back and get a new vision on what's going on. Make that sacrifice. Take a half step back so that someone else can stand on your shoulders and see what's going on, or something along those lines. It's not always about you, but there's also a balance between ego and meekness. And that's where humility is. It sits in the middle. because you have to take care of yourself and you also have to take care of the people around you. So it's a really, really hard balance, and it's something that no one's really going to ever get 100%. But that's something that we can always work towards as well. So the things that leaders all believe in, they have roots in their sacrifices. Your rags to riches story or movie, that is a sacrifice. The basketball player who didn't become the best for no reason. LeBron James, Michael Jordan. Jimmy Butler is a great example of this as well. As he grew up, he was poor. He had to work for his parents. And look where he is now. He's in the finals. Somebody that for years past people blew off because he was the problem with the team, whereas now he's the leader of the team. And as he grew up, he made sacrifices to get to that point. There's not a single day that goes by that he doesn't make another sacrifice. 15 minutes after gym is over, after practice is over, 2 hours before practice begins, he's in that gym. And that's a sacrifice he makes as a leader to better the people around him. Michael Jordan is a great, great example of this, because not only was he a great player, but as he played, he lifted the people around him up. Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, those guys probably would not be in the history books without that leadership there. So you can kind of see where this stuff applies everywhere in life. It can be business world, sports, your life as a high schooler, anything. Just recognize those sacrifices. And it's also really, really important to understand what people are sacrificing for you. Your student council advisors sacrifice days for you, sacrifice hours for you, 5-minute phone calls. Stoney called me an hour ago about some idea, and then 5 minutes, done with the call. But she made that sacrifice to call me in the middle of a plan period to make sure that we were on the same page. And I appreciate that. That your family makes sacrifices for you, staying up later to help you with homework or anything of that sort. And it'll build this sort of appreciation for what people are doing for you. So it's a positive mindset, like understanding what people are doing for you and what you could do for other people. So it's, like I said, it's the precursor of a positive, healthy mindset, and that is imperative in today's society. So now, how do we go about accomplishing all of these things? It's a ton to take in. It all may seem negative. This may seem negative and very controversial, but the way I like to think about sacrifice is I wake up in the morning, I get in the shower, and then I look at myself in the mirror and I say, if I died today, would I be content with what I've done in my life? I ask myself this in the morning, and then at night I ask myself, if I died in my sleep tonight, did what I do today, was it my best? Did I make a difference? And what did I do something meaningful to me? If you do that and you understand that there is no better time than today, you will be 100% better. And I know it's 100% cheesy. You've heard it a million times, but there is a complete difference between saying something and believing it. And so if you believe that you'll get better, and you believe that what you do today affects tomorrow and the day after that, you're set. Just remember that what you do today is going to affect you later. And it's hard to think about that, and it's hard to think how you would feel content. Everyone likes to think, yeah, I feel content with what I did today. But I spent an hour and a half on TikTok, and that could have been something that I could have done better. So you got to be really brutally honest with yourself on this stuff. It's a personal thing. And if you can't do it personally, you can't be honest with yourself. You can't be honest with other people. How do you expect yourself to trust someone else? So ask yourself tonight, when you go to bed, did what I do today meet my expectations? And did I make a difference somewhere in what I want to do? Your goal is totally different than mine, but I want you to think about that tonight. So that is a sacrifice. It has to be made in order to accomplish your goal. Whether you devote a small amount of time in your day to making progress in your goal, or whether you devote your entire day to making progress in your goal, that's a sacrifice. You have other things going on in life. For example, I have 3 AP classes and 3 other classes and football and student leadership. And I made the sacrifice to do a proposal. No matter how small it is, it's a sacrifice. Someone around you will appreciate what you've done. And just view those little things. It'll help you understand things that you're thankful for as well. View the little things that you made a sacrifice for. Like, I held the door open for someone. That's a sacrifice I made because now I'm behind my family. But that old couple that I opened the door for, that changed their entire day. That made them so happy because that doesn't happen very much. So think about it a little bit like that, like little random acts of kindness, kind of how I see it, are little tiny sacrifices that you make throughout the day. The bigger they are, the more noticeable they are. The smaller, the more appreciating that they are. Small, they're appreciated. Big, very appreciated. Just the weight of the decision is different. So I believe the fact that you are going to die one day is the greatest motivator. And it sounds really, really depressing, but that's not even the fact of it. Because you know that there is an end limit in your game. I was talking about the infinite game earlier. You know that your life, if it starts here, it's going to end somewhere over here. If it ends here, what are you going to do in this time here to make sure that what you wanted to do here keeps going? And that builds into legacy. What sacrifices are you going to make sure that you survive longer than what you live? And it's totally cheesy, but there's a difference between saying something and meaning it. You can say something. You can say, yeah, I gave my 100% today. If you don't mean it, you just failed yourself. It's really harsh, but you got to be 100% strict with yourself. And then once you're strict with yourself and you can trust the decisions and the things you're telling yourself, then you can go to next people. You got to grow outward. It's this idea of a safety circle. Your circle starts within yourself and it expands out and out and out and out until everyone feels safe. So you kind of have to be really strict on yourself to build up that confidence to move out. So ask yourself what you believe in right now, what you know you want to do in life, and ask yourself how far you would go to ensure that whatever you want is accomplished in your lifetime or past your lifetime. And what lengths would you go to make sure that that's accomplished? If that's something that involves other people, then it's really, really special. If you say, I want to go out and I want to help homeless people today. I want to go out and I want to end world hunger, let's say. It's a big, big idea. It's probably impossible, almost 100% impossible. But you can still work towards that. And every single step you take along that way is progress towards it. It involves helping other people. The smiles on those faces are what student leaders work for. That's at least what I work for. I work to see the smiles on the people's faces that I interact with. Every day, my goal is to make sure that somebody I interact with smiles and that I can make a day better. If I can do that, I'm happy with what I've done today. It's something really, really small. So start small, make it bigger. If you can involve other people, you're set. That's the ultimate sacrifice, is helping other people, because you're putting your needs second. You're working to make sure that they have what you may have already. And as I know, a lot of people have very, very rough lives. They spend their nights questioning themselves, what they stand for, why these things are happening to them. And I believe that all things happen for a reason. There is a reason that this happened to you, and you just have to keep fighting to understand what that is. You may have heard this before, but they say that life is the most difficult test, or the most difficult teacher, because they give you the test first and then the practice or the understanding later. You're not going to understand why things are happening to you. It's just impossible. You're not going to be able to predict the future. But if you push through and you seek for understanding in what it taught you, you have learned. And if you keep a learner's mindset, that healthy mindset, that positive mindset, that people are doing things out of their way to support you, even if it's as small as opening a door for you, then you're unstoppable. Nothing can stop you. Those little sacrifices build up over time, and eventually you're going to be able to achieve what you want. So I'm going to go into a personal story. I thought the exact same thing. Why is this happening to me? Why me? Why not someone else? In 2018, January 4th, I tore my ACL, my MCL, and my meniscus in a non-contact basketball pivot, all three in one. And I remember that there were nights where I cried because no one understood what I was going through in my house. And there were nights that I had given up because I didn't know where to go. I'd never experienced anything like this. The people around me didn't necessarily understand what I was going through. There were people that were there for me, but I felt lost. I used to be a very, very athletic person, and I had a really good chance with a sport that I was participating in. I was a 3-time state champion motocross racer, and then that was ripped right out of my hands. I went into that hospital that day ready to basically restart my life. And when I came out of that emergency room, all I can remember is having my IV in, being barely conscious, and going in and out of consciousness as the nurses are telling me to breathe, because I can't breathe. So I'd stop breathing, and then my IV would go flatline, and I would pass out. And I'd wake up 15 minutes later to the same thing, and it happened like 4 or 5 times. That was the day that I started asking, why me? I remember feeling so helpless that the second time that I tore my ACL in September of 2019, and having a second surgery on December 17th of 2019 on my ACL. That feeling of everything that you've ever wanted being right there and being torn from you, it's not something that you ever want to experience. But when I did it, I attacked it with, what is this teaching me now? Where one door closed, where athletics closed for me, student leadership opened. I believe that I would not be here talking to you guys today if it were not for that day, January 4th of 2018. I would be doing something else. I don't know what that is, and I don't regret it. And it just took one day. One day I realized that after all this, I had to go through that to understand who I was. I believe that everyone has a moment in their life where they were broken down to the point where they didn't know what was going on, to that breaking point where they're just emotionally unstable and they don't know where to go. They feel lost. But when you come out the other end, you found a piece of yourself, a piece you didn't know existed. And that, it's not even a sacrifice. My sophomore self thought it was a sacrifice. The sacrifice that I made was to understand that I probably could not play sports again with that. The sacrifice that I made that was understanding who I was. It wasn't a sacrifice that I made. It was something that was for me. And I know it's totally not, it doesn't seem like the kind of sacrifice we speak of normally. But it was something that had to happen for something in return. And I firmly believe, I believe to a point, to a T, that people, that every single person on this call and every other person in this world has a moment like that that shifted their entire mindset, shifted who they are, opened a door where one closed. And I want you guys to think about that. And because that's a very driving point. After what I went through, I never want to hear a story of anything remotely similar happening to any other person. I don't want any other person to feel alone. I don't want any other person to go home and cry and ask why me. I don't want that for anyone. That was not enjoyable. So every day I work towards finding the person who asks why me and seeking them out and making sure that they don't ask why me and they understand that there's someone for them and that they are not alone. And I know there's something for everyone out there that'll do that. Those people who understand this stuff have a chip on their shoulder. There's a reason that all of you are here. It's bigger than yourself. Now you just got to find it. It's the thing that drives you to get up every day in the morning, because that's the hardest thing to do every day, is to get up. If you have a thing that's driving you, you can do it. And what are you going to do in that day, sacrifice-wise, to make sure that at the end of the day, you're saying to yourself, I fulfilled what I needed to do today. So from now on, keep that feeling in sight today, tomorrow, and forever. And I challenge you to know why you're doing what you're doing, to know how far you go to accomplish what you want, and why you started with your why. Because there's a cause and effect somewhere in there that caused you to take that direction. All of these things are going to help you understand just how devoted to your goals and your beliefs that you are. And that is something that it's, once you know where you're going, you have that roadmap, you understand, you have a vision in your head for what you want to accomplish and how you're going to get there. There is nothing that can stop you. There is not a single thing that can stop you. People who think that you can't do it, they can't stop you. So figure out what your why is. Figure out what caused you to think your why was that. And figure out how far you'd go to accomplish what your goal is. Because leadership is built on sacrifice. All leaders have to make sacrifices. No matter how small you are, no matter how big you are, you all have to make sacrifices. And so, on a final closing note, I would like to add a quote by Robert Frost. And the quote goes a little bit like this: "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." To me, I relate to this as one of my football coaches told me last week. This is the first sport that I've done in 2 years where running is involved, and I am dying. But he told me, he said, you all have an opportunity to change the culture of a program. That's something that any athlete, any leader would immediately jump on just because it was that opportunity. And you all have that opportunity right now. So let's make the most of that chance. And right now, we may not see it. It seems like things are flying by your head faster than you even know. You have an election coming up. You have a pandemic going on. You've got all of these things that you have to remember that are unusual. They're not normal. Now they're becoming the normal. But what you need to know right now is you have a chance to make a sacrifice, whether it be your time or anything else. You have a chance to make that sacrifice, to work hard, to step up to the plate. And it's a time to make a change to your culture of your school, your community, your family, or your life. Any of those, wherever you need to start, that is this time here. You have the chance of a lifetime. No one has ever had this before. Not a single person has had this opportunity before in the history of the world. And we have that in our hands right now. So I beg you to find what you're fighting for. Make the change that you want to make. Then grow and cultivate that in your school so that when you leave those halls, you have done what you wanted to say, or what you wanted to do, and you can say, yes, I'm proud of the work that I've done here in this school, in this community, and in these halls. Thank you, guys. That's my presentation.
Caden, great job. Amazing. Thank you so much for going first. Took a lot of courage, obviously, and a really great presentation. So thank you so much. For all of those for everyone who was in attendance, thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be a weekly occurrence for the next couple of weeks. So we'll be sending out Zoom invitations each week for both student and advisor webinars for the advisors that are on. And we look forward to many more great opportunities for some professional development. So thank you so much. Caden, thank you for going first. We look forward to more great presentations over the next few weeks.
Thank you, Justin, for the opportunity to allow us to do this stuff. It means a lot. So.
Well, perfect. Well, we look forward to more, obviously, our state reps taking the lead on some of these presentations, and we'll send out those invitations shortly. So thank you so much, and we'll see everybody. Advisors, we'll see you tomorrow, and students, we'll see you next week.
Adios.
Thanks, guys.